All right, here we go. Episode one, notes from the fringe. If it sounds like I'm reading this first video, that's because I am. Uh, it's the first time I'm ever doing like a historical video with notes and images and stuff. So I thought if I didn't have something to read from, I might stutter through most of the video. And I'm more interested in getting the content out than how it comes up. But in the future, I'd like to, tighten up my game and be able to kind of just free flow because I always kind of prefer that when somebody's doing a video. But anyways, here we go. Let me just jump into this. All right. Hello, everyone. My friends call me Bo, and I want to welcome you to my first ever Notes from the Fringe video. I was so excited about making content that I didn't spend much time thinking about the name of the channel, and Notes from the Fringe is an old domain name I bought like 10 years ago when I started getting heavy into the world of speculative theories. So at least it's finally getting some use. All right, now onto the content. This video is heavily inspired by the work of Howdy Mikowski. And it relates to some of his speculative theories that involve analyzing the mystery of the world's fairs and trying to understand just how they were built by society over 100 years ago. I highly recommend you watch all his videos, but to reference the thesis of this video, at least watch his last one titled Expositions, Wow, Keanu Reeves' new TV series, Dubai AI, New Questions. So you can see where my inspiration comes from. I will link to his channel and that video in the description below. All right, now onto my notes and speculations from a suggestion that he made and one that I decided to follow up on. The full follow through may take weeks, but already I'm intrigued and wanted to begin sharing some ideas in discussing the 1904 World's Fair in Missouri. In his video, Howdy brought up some interesting work titled Louisiana and the Fair by J.W. Buel, which is a 9-volume, 5,000-page series that was written as an accompaniment to the fair. It is massive, and although I have only spent a little time browsing it, I've already found some interesting nuggets. Like, for example, the cover that you are looking at now, or what I should say is that you're looking at the cover now. So Louisiana the Fair by J.W. Buel. It came out when the fair opened. And it was like, I mean, it's hard to imagine a 5,000-page 9-volume book being like a pamphlet and an accompaniment to the fair. But in essence, that's kind of what it was. It was meant for the fair goers. I'm imagining they sold it there on site. And it was something for you to read as you walked the grounds. The other page you see there, that is the first illustration that comes up in volume 1. And, that kind of gives you an idea of the magnitude of the fair. Remember, 1904, so we are talking about 120 years ago. You see these massive structures. It's all lit up, beautifully lit up. And whatnot. Okay, so most of the related content will come later as I dig deeper, but for today's videos I want to focus specifically on a few things about how and why the volumes were even written in the first place. They seem almost like they were meant to be a pamphlet, like I was saying, an accompaniment to the fair, as the publication date coincides with the opening of the fair. Each volume has a different theme, like education, art, etc., as well as the history of the Louisiana Purchase, which was, after all, the purpose of the fair, as it was a celebration of the centennial of the Louisiana Purchase, much like the Chicago World's Fair 10 years prior was a celebration of Columbus discovering America. And here's an image of the Chicago Fair of 1893 to behold. Now this, again, This gives you an idea on what we're looking for. This happened 10 years prior to the 1904. And I'm from Chicago, so it always kind of trips me out to imagine, you know, I've been to this area. It was built in Jackson Park. And I've been going to Chicago most of my life. And when I see these pictures, it just kind of blows my mind. I can't imagine it, right? I can't imagine the magnitude because we don't have that now in Chicago. We have beautiful buildings, and there are a couple buildings left over from the Chicago World's Fair, and we have skyscrapers and all of that, you know, which are, I guess you would call today's wonders. But, you know, nothing like this amazing, beautiful, detailed Roman Gothic architecture. And like, again, you know, watch Howdy's series, please, so you can get a background on the World's Fairs and a lot of the mysteries. But again, understand, you know, and again, the purpose of the video is not to dig deep into the World's Fairs mysteries themselves. It's to kind of like, you know, be a starter point. But, you know, what they say is they built all of this out of temporary materials. Wood, obviously they needed, and then they called it staff, I believe, which to me seems like an elevated level of paper mache, right? But again, you know, I don't care what you're making it out of. How are you getting this detail? Like, look at the back of that statue there. Okay, I don't care if it's paper mache or butter that you're carving that out of. How are you getting that detail? Again, it, you know, doesn't solve anything, but so many of us who are, you know, amazed by the abilities they had back then to put these World's Fairs expeditions on, and obviously roll our eyes to how it all went down. You know, these are the type of images that really, you know, kind of tick our bullshit meter off, so to speak. But anyways, but said, here's an image of Chicago Fair to behold, get an idea of the grandeur, especially if you are new to the mysteries of the World's Fair. Those major events, like the Louisiana Purchase and Columbus sailing the ocean blue, are very important to the established timeline of his story, right? And are perfect events to celebrate in a world now controlled by the famous robber barons of the day. And that's kind of going with the theme of my little intro video here, which is going to be kind of a short one, and we're going to dig deeper. But, you know, who had interest, right, in what was written in this pamphlet and describing history for you, and also telling all of the millions of people that were coming to the fair what was to be expected from society moving forward, and to let them know where they had come from, you know, just so they understood, right? Famous robber barons of the day, the turn of the century industrial titans like J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller that had the most to gain, and therefore have great interest in taking fiction and making it fact. I have an image here. This is another, you know, this image here, I just kind of threw it in there because Howdy talked about it in his last video. It's a good image to illustrate for you the oddities, and, you know, in trying to wrap your minds around just what was happening or going on or what they were trying to express. I mean, he talks a bit about, you know, all the crazy things going on in this image. You have this Roman soldier, and then you have the people being bombarded by meteors in the background. Some of them are melting into the surface, and there's just, I mean, you could stare at this picture for a long time and just try to wonder, like, what is going on, okay? Anyways, so I thought I had a picture here of, there they are. Okay, so these are when we're talking about the robber barons, right? These are the main focus. These are the power brokers of the day: John D. Rockefeller, Cornelius Vanderbilt, Andrew Carnegie, J. Pierpont Morgan. If any of you guys ever seen the Men Who Built America, amazing series on either Discovery or History, it again, it dictates history for you. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do your own research. We're going to give it to you and tell you exactly how amazing these wonderful people were. But it's possible there's another side to the story, right? Because the mysteries of the World's Fairs and Tartaria and everything that goes along with it, obviously, to many of us, are hiding something, right? Who has the most to gain from hiding history? Who has the most to gain from plugging you in to their new industrial age? Okay. Again, please look deep into Howdy's work to get the backdrop for the World's Fair mysteries, but fiction into fact brings me back to J.W. Buell himself. So I have, just pulled, sometimes, you got to start from the end to learn about somebody. And again, I was inspired because Howdy in his video, he mentioned, he said, there's just not enough time for me. He's ready to kind of turn the page. And he said, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody just really dove into this book to uncover a lot of the fantastical mysteries just in this book and what they're trying to convey. I'm up for the challenge. I'm at a good point in my life right now where I have some opportunity and time to dig in. And again, I'm inspired by his work. So I decided to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into the book. And I planned on kind of picking out some of the, like the images that Howdy was bringing forward and discussing them. But I couldn't even get past the introduction without already kind of, my mind kind of running and being interested in why they chose J.W. Buell to write this volume. Okay, and just getting stuck there turned into a video. So that's kind of the subject, the theme of this video, is just explaining who J.W. Buell was and why they might have chosen. But, starting from the back, James William Buell, journalist, author, and editor, whose name appeared on the title pages of 54 works, some of which contained from 10 to 15 volumes, died at San Diego. His books covered a wide range from Legends of the Ozarks to a work on the history and mythology of music. His compilations of stories of the Bible is said to have reached a sale of more than 1.3 million copies. Mr. Buell, who was born in Golconda, Illinois in 1843, came to San Diego in 1908. He was graduated from the University of Illinois, and this, I believe, is from 1920 is when he died. So that's interesting to know. So the World's Fair is in 1904. And he died in 1920 at 70. So he was well established in his life, and most of his great works were already written, right? So he was already a respected author of the time, a respected author that was very busy explaining history to the people of that day. Brings me to J.W. Buell himself, the man they turned to in order to write the Louisiana World's Fair of 1904's defining work, the work that would describe for millions of visitors both the world we were going to become, as well as telling millions of visitors about the world we came from. The point obviously being, what an opportunity to create the version of history they, the robber barons, the power brokers of the day, wanted us to know. That seems like a pretty big ask for an author. And if you are the power brokers and robber barons of the day with the most to gain from both their versions of the future they would control and the past they needed to hide to gain that control, you may hire someone exactly like J.W. Buell. Let's look deeper into him, and we will begin with the end, which is his obituary. I just showed that. Okay. Anyways, J.W. Buell, born in 1849, died in 1920. He was the author of 54 works, many of which had a historical theme. In other words, this guy was already extremely active and busy in describing for us both world's history as well as American history. And this work on the Louisiana Fair came later in his life when he was well established and known. He is historically revered by the establishment, and it appears he was quite popular in his day as well. His historical writings were widely read, and that is the key to his connection, interestingly. It also appears He was a Mormon, which greatly colored his version of history, as his 1884 work, The Mystery and Miseries of America's Greatest Cities, appears to have 13 chapters on the Mormons. And that's this book here, Mysteries and Miseries of American Greatest Cities. So again, it's interesting that, here he is, this historical author describing history for us. But again, he appears by all of my research to have been a Mormon. So, that's totally fine. But again, we already know, the Mormons have some interesting historical observations on the past and where they came from and stuff. We don't need to dig into that here, but it is interesting, right? You're at the 1904 World's Fair, millions of people are coming in, and this is the guy that they chose to define history and the future for them. Okay. Now, my point here is not to poke fun at the Mormon version of historical events. And honestly, after reading about J.W. Buell and seeing his connections to them, it makes me want to dig deeper. But I want you to consider for a second what kind of sway a popular writer with many historical works under his belt would have had with the turn of the century visitors of the Louisiana World's Fair. And coincidentally, how fascinating it is to think about how today's historical writers, whom most continue to espouse the established version of history, may be surprised to learn about historically significant J.W. Buell's Mormon colorization of events, the colorization that established the precedent in 1904, but took some digging around to reveal. In fact, an interesting side note is that even though he was a popular illustrator and photographer as well, I couldn't seem to find any portraits of him, but in searching for one, I did find many other seemingly significant historical Buells. I've got my screen linked to the presentation, but I did pull up a page here, just Buell high resolution. And I can't say for sure that these are related to him, but when you type in J.W. Buell, a bunch of Buells come up. Look like his father was an author, maybe his uncle. Then you have I found about 7 or 8 historical Buell, same spelling. One of them was a general in the Union Army, William Buell, and then he had a different last name. Again, I'm sorry, I can't pull that up right now, but found it quite interesting. This guy seemed to be well connected, right? It wasn't like he was coming from poverty, so to speak. I'm not 100% sure about that, but looking at his last name and then connecting all the dots, it seemed like he wasn't from a historically significant family, which would make sense that he had a connection with the Morgans and the Rockefellers and whatnot. He had a seat at the table, so to speak, right? So kind of in it with them. Maybe the Buells weren't, robber barons themselves, but maybe they got wealthy and rich alongside of them. Again, speculation, but it's kind of what it looks like. All right. Now, in concerning the precedent being set by his great work of the Louisiana Fair, Howdy was alluding to the high strangeness of many of the writings and illustrations in his 9-volume work. Again, that's the one I pull up here, and boy, are they ever like this one that Howdy discussed. But, again, what an opportunity for the controllers of the day to set forth in print an established version of history for all to behold as they walked the massive fairgrounds. In wonderment, in awe, they were assured by J.W. Buell and the creators of the fair that all they were witnessing was newly built and accomplished by a great nation looking to take the lead in global affairs. From Rome to Britain to the U.S., we have now arrived on your unquestioned truth. Okay? And again, just pulling up some of the images of the fair. This is one that really gets me. This is the Louisiana Fair. They call it the sculpture of the Cascades. But again, imagine, look at how far down the horizon, this building goes. And again, I understand the size and the structure, right? We're building it out of paper mache or whatever, plastic, which ironically, according to Howdy's video, wasn't even invented till 1907. So we have all this stuff lit up, just like the 1893 World's Fair. And again, it's wondering, okay, how did we use the wiring for the lighting? Again, not definitely not like it definitely doesn't debunk it in and of itself. We may learn that there's other ways that they had to light it, but again, you take everything as a whole, and you have to wonder, okay, I get the size, but the detail, it doesn't matter what that sculpture or all these thousands of life-size sculptures were made out of. How do you have enough artists to get that detail? It just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. Okay, I just have a hard time, and so many do, and that's why the World's Fair's mysteries are really starting to come to the forefront. It's weird. I've been, interested in speculative theories for a long time. And, I even told that to my wife. I said, how did I miss that one? I mean, the World's Fairs, Tartary, all that stuff. I kind of missed it. It's almost like it appeared out of nowhere. And then now it's like, one of my favorites. And it's the one, what I'm telling people that I'm learning about the World's Fairs and when I'm conversing, it's like, hey, all I'm trying to do here is debunk the World's Fairs. I want to prove to myself that everything happened the way they said, so I can move on with my life. But if it didn't happen that way, and the mystery is real, and there really is some stuff going on behind the scenes, then it might be the most important cover-up in the history of our world. So obviously, it's endlessly fascinating. In fact, many of those visitors could be reassured by his work. And I quote, this is a quote from the book to kind of give you an idea. Remember, you're at the fair, you just arrived, and you've got the book in hand, and you're seeing the wonders. And he's telling you the Universal Exposition of 1904 commemorates the centennial of this acquisition, the Louisiana Purchase, which transformed the United States from a struggling group of colonies into a nation of first rank. It records the progress of the world. It marks especially the advancement of this among other nations. The World's Columbian Exposition of 10 years ago occupied 650 acres of ground, had 82 acres under roof. This is the Chicago one they're talking about, and cost more than $20 million. 17 years before was the Centennial Exposition at Philadelphia, and that was celebrating the centennial of our nation being born. Great progress was indicated by the World's Columbian Exposition in comparison with the Centennial. See, we're progressing. He wants you to know, like, look, everything you're seeing here, is just progress. We're progressing from Philadelphia to Chicago, even more wonderful. And now look at how much we've progressed as a people, as a country. Greater progress characterizes the comparison with the Universal Exposition of 1904. So he's telling you, we are progressing, he says. I mean, he basically opens by saying, I know you all were impressed by the Chicago World's Fair of 10 years ago, and that was better than the Philadelphia Fair 17 years ago. So behold this marvel of 1904 and appreciate how far we have come. I mean, who could question that? I mean, there it is. It's right there in writing. We knew there was a Chicago World's Fair. You heard it was wonderful. And now who's to question, these great works that you're seeing now? Anyways, I just found that interesting before I even dig into the book completely. Is the man they commissioned to write the book had already been extremely busy defining history, right? It's like, they went and got the guy that they knew could define history at that moment and define the future moving forward, and they got one of the most talented people of that day to write that book for them, to write that 9-volume works. And they covered all art. Here is the history of art. Here is the history of education. Here is where we're headed. They were laying the groundwork for the future that they wanted to create. He was already extremely busy telling the citizens of his day what his story was, and it seems the robber baron, the great industrialist of the day, really liked his version better than the real one. Or maybe, just maybe, the good citizens of Louisiana constructed these masterworks that look comparable to all of Rome and Egypt's finest works. Maybe, just maybe, the farmers and the settlers that just moved west into the world and were settling in 1904, maybe they just got together and just built Rome. Hey, it's a World's Fair. Let's build Rome. And then, like what happened in every World's Fair after, we're done. It's amazing. We did it. Now let's tear this down. Let's tear all these sculptures down. I mean, again, why would you need to tear all these sculptures down? I mean, they're built out of paper mache. I mean, can't you find a way to preserve them anyways? I mean, look how amazing. Some of these works might have been the greatest works of sculptors of the day. And we don't have an opportunity. Luckily, we do have an opportunity because we have a lot of images and stuff. Thank goodness photography was around back then, because, you know, illustrations could be illustrations and fanciful thinkings from an artist. But I mean, these are images. These are pictures. It gets much more difficult, you know. And again, I'm gonna end this here, and I'm gonna dig deeper into this book. And I want to thank you guys, anybody who's watching this. And again, absolutely, you know, Howdy Muskowski is much watch if you really have a speculative mind and you're fascinated. I really love the way he presents things, and I've been inspired by him to continue the research. You know, let him go, you know, in the direction he wants. I'll stay in this lane for a little while and work through this book, and you know, anything else that comes up, I'm going to throw a vid out there. But again, I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for being a part of my first ever video, and then we will see you on the next one. Thank you.